Hi, everybody. Julia Lachey here. I'm going to go through how to conduct an online buyer consultation. Now, as you know, there's obviously more than one right way to do this. This is simply the way that I have been doing it. You might find it helpful and useful as well. Maybe you don't. Maybe you decide you want to use something different. Either way, it's an option. It at least gives you a starting place where you can kind of determine how you're going to conduct your online buyer consultations. So the first step in doing this, I've kind of got it set up here where you have a 5-step process. The first step is determining what online method you would like to use. For this platform and for this training that I'm doing right now, I'm using Zoom. However, you're welcome to use many others. There's WebEx, there's something new I tried with someone else was conducting a training with me yesterday. There's all kinds of different online communication platforms. What's most relevant to you is that you need to make sure that you have practiced it before your scheduled appointment. You don't want to get on the appointment with your client or potential client and spend a duration of the time that you've scheduled trying to figure out how to get the technology to work. So once you choose your online method that you're going to use, make sure you practice connecting it and actually practice your presentation prior to having them come on. Also, you want to make sure that they're able to easily join whatever method you've chosen to use. So you'll want to send your client a calendar invite with a link to your online meeting so that they know how to get on it, it's easily accessible, and how to find it. Once you're all on, like we are here together, you'll want to share your screen with them so that they can be able to identify things. Now, for a buyer consultation, when it's in person or whether it's online, there's a few things that we are conducting a buyer consultation for. I like to say, one, we're doing the consultation to get the buyer's needs. Someone is interested in purchasing a home. We need to sit with them and find out what it is exactly they're looking for. Conducting a buyer consultation also gives us an opportunity to actually set expectations on how you perform as an agent, what they're expecting you to do as an agent, and make sure everyone's on the same page. So the first thing, particularly in the environment that we're in, we're doing a lot of these online trainings because we aren't able to be in a position where we're together. We have a global pandemic going on and people are handling that differently. You'd want to start with simply building rapport. How are you doing in this? How are things going for you and your family? Find some common ground and simply have a discussion with them about them. This whole entire buyer consultation is strictly about the client. How you can best serve the client, what the client is looking for, and what they're needing from you. So take that opportunity to build the rapport with the client and learn all of those things. At that point, I like to go into the needs analysis. So how is a needs analysis done? In a lot of different ways. Generally, a needs analysis, what I'm looking for is to find what the client is interested in purchasing. And so the conversation would really just be, so Mr. or Mrs. Client, I understand you want to buy a house. Tell me more about that. This is an opportunity for us to just simply listen and listen to why they want to buy a house, what they're looking for in a house, kind of what they're thinking. Once they start to talk about that and what they're looking for in a home and what they're wanting to do, then I get a little bit more specific about specifically, I may say something like, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, tell me 5 things you need in a house. Something that's a non-negotiable. You absolutely must have these things or it's a no-go. And so I would listen to them and explain to me their specific needs in the property. I need a 2-bedroom home. I need 2 bathrooms. I need to have a yard because I have a dog. I need to have things that they will not negotiate. Once we've identified that, I also like to do something we call going 3 deep. So if someone says, well, I need to live next to a really large park. The question then, of course, becomes, well, tell me more about that. What's important to you about living next to a large park? That's the second one. They may say, because I like to go outside. Really, tell me more about that. Why do you like to go outside? What is it that you do outside? Maybe you'll uncover a need that they really just want to be next to a bike trail because they like to ride bikes. That doesn't necessarily put them in the specific neighborhood they thought they needed to be in. So it's a good idea to go 3 deep to determine what the real need of the client is. You'll also need to get this information because you're going to be setting them up on an auto email from the MLS so that they'll be receiving homes that match the criteria they're telling you about. So that is the 3rd step of this particular process. Again, you're sharing a screen just like I am now with you. And then you can go into your buyer presentation. And this is where you can get a little creative. Everyone's buyer presentation looks different. I'm going to go through kind of showing you what my buyer presentation looks like. It's very, very short and sweet. It's not at all in detail like my actual printed buyer presentation is, simply because I haven't added to it yet. At some point, I may continue to add to this online presentation, but at this point, it's simply meeting the bare needs of what I need, and it's working for me for now. So whatever that looks like for you, you want to have it on an online platform, and I'll show you that momentarily, what that actually looks like. And then last but not least, the last step is simply explaining to them the buyer forms, the IABS form, the buyer's representation agreement. What I like to do in this situation is I have already sent that to the client. So I've sent them a calendar invite with the link to our Zoom meeting or whatever platform you're going to be using to conduct your online buyer consultation. And I've also sent them forms. In the email with the forms, I say, don't worry about these now. This is something we're going to discuss when we actually meet in our call. So they already have the forms. I will also already have those forms pulled up and ready to explain them to them when they are on this consultation that we're doing. In addition to that, as I am explaining those forms, I would have prepared to send them to them through DocuSign so that I can have them sign them immediately as I'm explaining them, like I would in a person-to-person consultation. So I'll show you the next slide here. I'm now getting into my actual buyer consultation presentation. My team is called the Signature Group. I have a presentation on paper. It's in a packet and it's a little booklet and it says buy with the Signature Group. All I've done is transformed that to some slides. Right now, what I'm showing you is actually a PDF, but I also have it in an electronic form where I can just go from slide to slide. You can do it in a PowerPoint, however you'd like to do it, but I've just basically taken the information I have in my buyer consultation presentation and I've put it on an online platform to share with them virtually. It looks something like this, where I just tell about my team. Now, again, everybody's buyer presentation looks different. You may have more information, less information. I'm simply at this point sharing with you what mine looks like, which is at this point what I will be sharing with the client. I talk about the team, meet the team. I explain to them, if you have a team, this is a good opportunity to do that for me. My team is in Minneapolis, and so I don't actually show homes there. So I would explain to them that Amy on the screen here is my buyer's agent, and Amy would be the person showing them the home, and I would be negotiating the transaction, et cetera, et cetera. Another critical, important time in a buyer consultation is to explain to people how the process will work and how it will work with you. Especially if it's a first-time home buyer, they're going to need to know, how does this actually look? So I take this opportunity to, one, show myself as the expert, showing my service and my expertise and educating them about the buying process. Again, in my presentation booklet, all of these numbers are accompanied by a page that goes into detail about them. I have, just for the sake of simplicity, listed here in a timeline that's very short and sweet and simple. So it would sound something like this. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, here's the buying process. The first one that I have is simply meeting with the realtor, which is what you're doing now. We are going to talk about kind of what you need in a home, what a home looks like for you, things that are important to you so that I can identify what it is exactly that you're hiring me to look for. Similarly, I'd like to explain to you kind of how we work together and make sure that we are all on the same page as we continue to move forward in this process. The second step, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is to get pre-approved. Now, at this step, your client may or may not already have a lender. If they do not have a lender, I have several that I would recommend to them based on their particular situation, and we can go into detail about that. You may choose to elaborate on this presentation and actually have another slide for each of these steps and go into detail. Again, this is very simple for the sake of simply sharing this information with you. This is what mine looks like. So I would go into step 2 and talking about getting pre-approved, making sure that we're looking at homes in their price range, et cetera, et cetera. In my buying process, I also like to have my buyers attend home buyer workshops. Many of my clients are first-time home buyers, and in that instance, if they're using some form of down payment assistance or first-time home buyer assistance, those programs often require them to go to a home buyer education workshop. And so I talk a little bit about that. And then I get into the interesting part of talking about shopping for a home. This is the fun part. And we discuss the details of shopping for a home at this part. Particularly what we're discussing in this environment is how we're shopping for a home under quarantine, under stay-at-home orders. So I would go into detail about how we safely look at homes, when we would identify if it was a time to look at a home. It's not an environment where maybe before you would have showed your client 10, 15 homes just because it's kind of fun to see the different homes. We're being very intentional and purposeful in this environment. So I would explain to them how we do that. Maybe we will be looking at virtual tours of homes before we actually ever go out and look at a home. But whatever that looks like for you, we explain that part of the process here. Then I go into detail talking about when we find a home, submitting an offer, discussing things like maybe we would be in a multiple offer situation, how we would negotiate terms, what writing an offer actually looks like. You'll need earnest money, you'll need option fee money if you choose to do that, and go into detail about what the writing of an offer actually entails. Of course, you'll be getting a home inspection after that, and I go into talking about the home inspection and possibly a list of home inspectors that you may recommend or suggest. And then we talk about the last two steps of final mortgage approval and closing. And at this point, I have literally probably spent a good 20 to 30 minutes explaining the home buying process to the person via Zoom, like we're doing now, sharing my screen with them. Again, you may have additional slides that you would want to have on here to go into further detail. Once we have established that, I've explained the process, I've now shown that I am the qualified professional to handle all of this for them and take them through each step of this process smoothly, we move on to talking about the forms. So what I might say is something like, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, as you notice, I sent you some forms via email. Can you go ahead and pull those up? I'd like to discuss what those forms are. Again, you'll also have those forms pulled up here on your computer. I'll minimize this so you can see that. So where's mine? Okay, here we go. So I would go into detail basically saying, talking about the IABS form. So, you know, Texas law requires us to give you information about broker services and how representation actually works. And then you can go into detail explaining the IABS form. Since they have it in their email and you, at this point, have also sent it to them electronically through DocuSign, you may say, you can follow along here in the DocuSign as well. I'm going to explain this to you, and then you can go ahead and sign in the places that I've provided for you to sign. So again, you would need to send this to them up front, send it to them through DocuSign so they can look at it while they're talking to you, and they can also sign it while they're talking to you, just like they may when you are in front of them at an actual buyer consultation appointment. Then we go on to talking about the buyer representation agreement. This is what the buyer representation agreement looks like. This is what it is. You explain it, go into detail with this same thing. You sent this to them through DocuSign, so now they can go ahead and electronically sign it while you're on the phone. And then ultimately what we've done at this point is we have done the entire buyer consultation. I'll go back to the first step. We have built rapport with them. We've conducted a needs analysis. We know everything it is that they need to know about purchasing a home, and we have gained all the information we need to know about assisting them in that in regards to whatever their needs are. And we have literally conducted our buyer presentation virtually and electronically. And we've explained the forms and also ideally gotten them to sign the IABS and the buyer representation agreement form. That's it. That's it. In a nutshell, how the entire process of doing this may take 45 minutes to an hour. But the things that you need to know up front is to choose what method of communication you want to use, Zoom, WebCX, whatever kind of thing you're going to use. Make sure that the technology works prior to your appointment. You're going to want to make sure that you build rapport, conduct your needs analysis, present your buyer presentation virtually, get them to sign. That's it, just like you would any other time. And that in a nutshell, guys, is how I conduct an online buyer consultation. Again, there's many other ways to do it. This is just simply the way that I am using it, and hopefully this video has been helpful to you. Feel free to let me know if you have any other questions.